la, la.
The writers and folks who worked for Worldwide Pants, I was just emailing somebody else in the family today saying, oh, these people don't take compliments very well. Right before I hit record, I gave Steve a compliment and there was an awkward silence, and there we go. It's the Letterman Podcast. We're back.
It's going to be an hour of awkward silences, so get ready.
It won't be, man. We're going to go deep, and I don't know how many people are going to be able to access this and find find enjoyment, but I certainly will. And anybody who has seen Bathtubs Over Broadway will, and who haven't yet had the pleasure, oh man, it's like we're giving you a gift that no matter what happens, when you open it, there will be an emotional reaction, a positive one. We are here with Steve Young 2.0, not Steve Young 2.0, but the Letterman Podcast with Steve Young as a guest 2.0, because we are going to go down the Bathtubs Over Broadway documentary with a fine-tooth comb. We haven't really done any pre-interview per se. I don't know if this can be shown here. This is the list of questions that I have based on.
And I, at some point, just randomly call out like question number 32, question number 6. Just
yes,
roll the dice.
Oh my God, you certainly can. Number 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's footage of you being shown in your office at Letterman, reaching out to some of these folks. Was that done for dramatic effect, or did you actually reach out to some of these folks to get to know them for your own gratification and enjoyment of this collecting pastime that you have created? Did you do that on company time, and did they know about that? And are we past the statute of limitations for Pants to come after you for doing that during work hours?
I'd been intermittently doing my very amateurish detective work since around 1996. I don't think I did it on company time. I think for the purposes of the documentary, that was either a dark week or a weekend, and we went in there, and those were legitimate calls with people I was excited to talk to, but I'd saved them so we could have the actual very footage of it really happening. But yeah, I was pretty conscientious about, all right, this grew into a hobby that no longer is technically connected to the workings of the Late Show. So I don't want to just abuse my position there by saying, guys, I'm going to need the day off. I need to pursue my own hobbies. Although I will say, very late in the game, spring of 2015, weeks away from ending the show, the documentary was ramped up to that point where I said, it might have been a Friday on a regular work week, or it might have been a working dark week or something, but I said, I'm going to need, if you can, a day or two. I need to drive up to Maine with a camera crew for an interview session with one of my people who's in the movie. So toward the end there, occasionally there was some accommodation. And as you know, we also shot in the offices and backstage, which unprecedented as far as I know. Nobody had been allowed that sort of access and permission to use that sort of footage. But at that point, it was Dave Letterman's project also. He was an executive producer and had helped us out early on and had granted his sort of seal of approval by becoming an executive producer. I interview him in the movie, so not really an abusive power move for me to say I need a few hours here and there. This was kind of under the official auspices of Mr. Letterman at that point.
Yeah, and I mean that question was asked tongue in cheek, of course, and it was surrounded by 2 other questions that give it a little more context. But I like the random.
You are not going to get me pinned down. I've got a bank of high-powered white shoe for employers here who know exactly what I can say and what I can't say.
Oh my God. Oh, this is so much fun, Steve. I appreciate this so much. My first question actually was Dave involvement. I'm going to take
a compliment better now. Oh, thank you. I'm glad.
Oh, there we go. Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask actually. Okay, so Bathtubs Over Broadway. Obviously, I think the culmination, unless other projects come, and I'm going to talk to you about that too. I think you should host a podcast on this stuff, but that's just me personally. I hope I don't know if you've ever considered that or not, but the industrial musical podcast, maybe with a snappier title, with Steve Young. Take my money, I'm in. I would I would listen to that
Well, that's part
weekly.
of it. How do I monetize it? Because I mean, I love talking about this stuff, but I don't know if I want to have it as my day job for the rest of my life. As much as there is great material and people to talk to, I feel like it would be hard to top the beautiful, tied up with a bow package that is Bathtubs Over Broadway. And yes, there's still new people to be found and new treasures to be found and new stories to tell, and we'll get into some of them today. But I feel so relaxed now that this story, this whole genre, which was teetering on the edge of an abyss that it was just going to swallow up forever, and we weren't going to ever know about it or understand it. It has been saved in such flamboyantly awesome fashion that I don't feel like I need to keep pushing, sweating to save it in some fundamental sense. This is all a victory lap, and for that I don't take the credit as much as I give it to Dava Whisenant, the filmmaker, who I met at Letterman when she was an editor. She made something so powerful and resonant and beautiful and strange and funny that we can all just relax now.
Okay, and Dava is like third one down. So Dave involvement was my very first question. And we'll get to Dava in a second here. He called you. Are you? Yeah.
Dava.
Dava, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. We'll get to Dava in a second, but with Mr. Letterman and his involvement at the very beginning of the documentary. Okay, maybe taking compliments from me, whatever. At the very beginning of the documentary, he says about you, you are the last vestige from another era when it comes to comedy writers. And to me, I think about when Regis passed, and he used a word to talk about Regis, and he used the word superlative. And when Dave throws out a compliment, many times they are well worded. The Economy Awards is very good, and they're very absolute. Calling you the last vestige from another era is a very high piece of praise from that man. Have you just blocked it out, or when you heard that for the first time, was it weird seeing it there, and did you ask for it not to be in the edit? Did you accept it immediately? What a cool thing he said about you, Steve.
Yeah. First of all, I had no input into what was in or out of the movie.
Okay.
And that is an important separation of church and state in the world of documentary. The subject,
because you're the subject,
should not be making creative decisions about the movie, or then it's a puff piece and a vanity project. And we've all seen biographical documentaries of celebrities who clearly were in tight control of what could or could not be said.
Yep.
I had not yet reached my height of diva behavior. I did not know you could do that. So no, Dava was completely making her own movie, and thank God, because she made the right movie and a brilliant movie. When Dave said that in that interview, of course it's thrilling, and you take it with a grain of salt, because while the cameras are rolling, he wants to say something nice. But I do hope that to some degree I'm a worthy colleague and successor to people like my friend and to some degree mentor Steve O'Donnell, who is kind of, to my mind, along with a few others like maybe Merrill Marco, the ultimate sort of classic era voice of the show. And if I've touched the hem of that garment occasionally, then all to the good. But it's also, I mean, a little bit of elegiacal cloud over a remark like that. He's the last vestige. Oh my God, I must be almost dead.
No, I think he's talking about how the era had significantly changed, and the landscape of late night had significantly changed. And I think that's probably the point that was being made.
All right. I think that's right. But yes, when you think, well, I just don't want to be sort of the last surviving member of some rock group that your grandparents liked or something. Sure. You got to be careful about that. And there is a certain amount now of I mean, just generations keep coming in. I was teaching at NYU for a while, a TV history course, and I would talk about Letterman, and you'd get the 20-year-old saying, "Oh yeah, my grandfather really liked that show."
Yep.
Like, really? Okay, I'm Jack Parr to these people now. Unavoidable. There you go.
Thank you for letting me negotiate through those waters here. We're gonna make it about other people now, I swear to God. Dava, editor Dava, sorry. Oh my God,
I'm gonna keep quizzing you about this.
Please do, Dava. I'm so sorry.
We'll have a super cut where it's all the Dava.
Dava, thank you. I appreciate. Yeah, there we go. We got an Oscars. We got an Oscars bit now. And I wish that there would have been an Oscar for this one here, because it was so well made. Like you said, everything from it was so lovingly put together. And I mean, I think we referred to this on the other show. My wife, when she cooks with love. I can feel it. There's love in this documentary. Everything is so well done. The opening song, so clever, and the animations and all of that stuff, so well thought out, summing up exactly what the documentary is, but in a beautiful show tune. And then, of course, the number at the end to bookend. Did you write that song?
I wrote the lyrics to the opening song and the closing song. The music for "It'll Change Your Life" at the top of the movie is by Tony DiLorenzo, who Dava brought in as the composer for the original score portions. And at the end, the "Take That Step" song I co-wrote with my friend Hank Beebe, who you've heard me mention. He's now 96, has been in the music business in various capacities since the early 50s. I think he's fairly astonished that he has lived to see the wheel turn so far, that now this is a thing, and stuff he wrote with great care and love and passion decades ago. He assumed no one would ever hear it or care about it or ask him about it. Now it's just out in the world in a way that he has fans. He has people excited to wish him happy birthday on Facebook, and it's just so great.
Present company included. So Dava, right? Yes.
You got it.
Okay. So
we're nailing this podcast.
Dava's working for the show. Assistant editor?
I think their title was editor. There were a bunch of editors in the stable who worked during the day making the comedy pieces, and then after the taping to get the show polished up and trimmed down for broadcast that night. So she was in the mix on all of that. But she had an extraordinary deftness with editing comedy. She had a great sense of timing and wit and pleasing absurdity and loving attention to detail that I immediately saw, okay, this person is somebody I would love to keep working with. We seem to have some extra level connection on stuff. So the book came out, Everything's Coming Up Profits, came out in late 2013. And she said, I think there's so much more to do with this based on stories you've told me, that I think I would like to, if you're willing to cooperate and be part of this, I would like to make a documentary about this genre, but also your explorations of it, because beyond the kitschiness of corporate musicals, the things you're telling me about finding people who were flabbergasted to hear that anyone cared about this secret kind of entertainment business work, and the gratification, and that you learn from them and that they feel empowered by you. There's so much going on with that. And I said, sure, absolutely. I trust you. I believe that your sensibility is right for this. I have no idea what's involved in making a documentary. But I'll cheerfully go where you tell me. And so I had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't know how long it takes to make a documentary film, especially a little indie film that starts with no money. It took about 4 years to make.
Yeah.
But, I learned a lot just by being in the middle of this vortex, and I came away with a great respect and admiration for anyone who can make a film and get it done. And how much more so if it's a great film that the world could not have seen coming, could not have imagined what was just about to land on their screens.
We were talking about compliments earlier. I'm so grateful that you have a moat around the compliments for you personally, but then also for the movie itself, because the movie is every bit. You're not overselling anything. Like, that movie it's as tight as a drum. And my question about Dava is, was this her first documentary? Like, was this like something that she was doing off the side of her desk while she's editing, the greatest late night show in history, into its twilight years, important times, powerful Dave, all of these moving parts, and also going, okay, yeah, but I'm a documentarian. I've got a documentary in me. I'm fascinated by this. I want to do this. And doing it off the side of her desk. That's what it seems like to me. Holy cow, what a talent.
The early stages of it was very shoestring budget and just do a little here and a little there. She was in New York sometimes, but she had been based in LA in, I don't know, the early 2000 teens. She was mostly in LA.
Yeah.
And had other editing jobs, but this was the first thing that she said, I want to take this on as my thing, and I want to make a film. I will direct it. I will edit it. I will write it. And yes, you write documentaries. People don't always understand that.
Absolutely.
Some think,
yep.
How can you write a documentary? You just turn the camera on and then turn it off at the end, and then your movie's done. Well, you have what I call 1,000-foot high pile of jumbled parts. Mm-hmm. And from that 1,000-foot high pile of jumbled parts, you have to make a modestly scaled but perfectly shaped and sized humming machine. And that takes 10 million decisions and strategic plans about how are we going to start, what information are we going to hold back, what are we going to dribble out in a strategic way so people learn what's happening, go from 0 to 60 and then from 60 to 120 in this beautifully calibrated way. So she had edited other people's projects, TV and film, for a long time. She knew what she wanted to do, even though at the beginning she didn't really know what the movie was going to be. And that's true of any documentary. You start, you think, well, I think it's going to be this, and then the curveballs of life, you just find things you didn't expect. We didn't know Dave was going to announce his retirement. That turned out to be a sort of ghost theme of the show, of the movie, that beautifully dovetailed with her larger points about how do you decide what the value of your career is, and how do you step away from something that's been a big part of your life, and what do you do next. All these things grew up organically, just the way it unfolded. And she had the bandwidth and the wisdom to take that and make it more and more and more in a higher level project.
You took the words out of my mouth when you talked about how it was, it's written out. We're working on some documentary stuff locally here with the Men's Mental Wellness Project that we have going on. And you're exactly right. What you're saying is echoing into our reality right now. We've got these ideas that we know that there are dots that are connected, and it's having those for the skeleton of the project, but then also the open-mindedness of the organic story that is unfolding right now as we do this. And what are the moments that are the big moments? What are the moments that are supplemental? And you got to allow that to breathe and be part of it as well. So there's that creativity as well. And it's a beautiful melding of the two, of storyboarding and writing versus capturing the story as it unfolds. What a cool, is that a contradiction almost in the process?
No, it's when it works really well, it's this magical symmetry. You plan and you prepare and you think you know what you're going for, but you're prepared for swerves of, well, just no one could have predicted this, or we didn't know we'd find that, or this thing fell out of the sky on us. Yes. And the better people say, okay, that's fascinating and beautiful, and we're going to build our machine even more powerfully now with that.
Oh gosh, I appreciate this already so much. We're already getting into the philosophy of the whole thing. I would love to talk to Dava at some point as well. I mean, my goodness, this is a rabbit hole that I'm gleefully bounding my way down. We're gonna call an audible here. Somebody is asking to join the conversation here, and I'm gonna admit him, and hopefully this works. It's Darin Cox. Insert your own joke here at this point.
I won't do it. Although I do appreciate the reference to insertion.
You didn't do it, but did it at the same time. Gerard Mulligan made a joke about it as well. Darin, host of the the Irritable Dad Syndrome Podcast. Darin, Steve, Darin, nice to introduce you two together.
Hi, Steve.
Oh, hi, Darin.
I've been a fan for a long time. I don't need to nerd out, but this is I was reading Dog World magazine when we cut in here, so sorry. I'll put this away.
This is a safe space for nerding out of any source and dimension. So let's have at it. Yes. Well, great to meet you, and I'm excited to hear that you got revved up and decided you had to get in on this conversation.
Yeah, because I was fascinated with Bathtubs Over Broadway from the moment that you first promoted it. I couldn't wait. And in Cincinnati, there's a theater called the Esquire that shows the small, the low budget, the artsy fartsy, the independent films. And I kept calling and asking, and they had absolutely no idea. And they're like, "There's a movie about a bathtub."
Well, no, it's not. We're not going to go into the sad difficulties of trying to market a movie about a topic that people have literally never heard of, but
it eventually did come to Cincinnati, but I drove up to Columbus to see it at an independent film theater there, and I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, it did get out just purely on the galvanizing effect. People would see it and not be able to stop talking about it and tell 10 other people, and then it would be multiplied a millionfold, and you'd get people all around the country pleading with the various art houses and theaters and independent theaters. If you don't get this, you're missing something. You're missing something crazy and wonderful. And it really did have a much longer than expected theatrical run. And then it sprang onto the Netflix and iTunes and all that, and just has continued to roll out just on that sort of stealth, but super effective. Just one person keeps telling 10 people, and it just keeps going.
Yeah. Well, the question I wanted to ask you, and I believe I've mentioned it to you before on Facebook, was about supplemental stuff, the bonus stuff, videos that did not make it into the movie. And I understand that there's a lot of stuff involved with releasing that, whether it's permission or just the money to market it or to do that. But I mean, is that something that you could possibly do with industrialmusicals.com, the website?
You're talking more about films, or?
Yeah, I'm talking about the deleted scenes, stuff that was cut out of the documentary.
Yeah, I really, I'm not sure what to say about that. Focus Features, which ended up distributing the movie, doesn't seem super keen on delving into that. Right. I do a show myself, trying to start it up again post-pandemic, where I have a 90-minute live show at a theater where I talk about what this stuff is, how I found it, but then show the entire 20-minute surviving fragment of The Bathrooms Are Coming, the entire 20 minutes of the General Electric Silicones, the Purina Dog Chow musical, other ones that didn't even make it into the documentary. So I love doing that, but my agreement with the various people who provided these films for now kind of limits what I can do with them in terms of wide release. And I think that's okay. I do like the feeling of addressing an auditorium full of people saying, how I wish I could be watching these films for the first time again. I envy you people. Never gonna have the opportunity to watch The Bathrooms Are Coming for the first time. And here it is tonight.
Yeah. Well,
But
no,
I do have lots of my own collection now has vast amounts of supplemental material, other films and videos that pile up, reel-to-reel tapes from various sources, stuff that was done but never made it onto vinyl, which I'm slowly digitizing. I've got loads of scripts and programs and photos. The ultimate thing to do is have a museum, and I don't know how to do that yet, but that does tickle the back of my mind.
I would go. I've worked in television since '93, and I've been a commercial producer, and now I produce promos for Antenna TV, classic television. And every time I put a spot together, when I watch it, the final thing, I still see all the stuff that was cut out of it. And so I watch TV differently after working in it for so long. And so I can only imagine. But I think it's great that people get to see some of the stuff that did not make it into the documentary, because my mind was blown with all that they put into those productions.
Yeah.
So kudos to you.
I'm that guy too. Like, I was the guy when the DVD first came out, or the Laserdisc even. I was the one that popped in that disc, and the first thing I did was turned on the commentary track. Like, I loved the supplemental stuff. I loved deleted scenes. And it's funny, every time I've watched Bathtubs, I own it. Every time I've watched it, at the end, when it goes back to the menu again, I want to go to the extras to watch anything that has been cut. I mean, and it's funny, there's levels of it. There's, of course, the Letterman fan in me wants to see any of that inside the Ed Sullivan Theater office building footage. I mean, you talking to Joe Grossman, oh, he's my buddy. I want to be, you guys talk about how you're buddies, and we see that, and all of us just want to be part of that. But then it's also the compelling material. I want to see the extended stuff. The bathrooms are coming. I want to see, the full footage of you listening to the entire one of these songs for the first time, or some of the other stuff that that some of these people collect. Like, I'm so invested in it. So I'm with you, Darin. I love the idea of somehow being able to see some of the supplemental footage. Maybe one day this thing becomes such a cult classic that the Ultimate Edition needs to be released or something like that.
I think it's well on its way. I'm sorry, I'm just mesmerized by Rupert G's forehead. I just keep...
Hey, speaking of which, thank you.
Oh, you have the deluxe edition that does have the rest of his face. Okay, good.
Exactly.
The Letterman Podcast brought to you by the Hello Deli, hello-deli.com for any Late Show with David Letterman merchandise. Rupert packs it on his own, and if you ask really nicely, he might add onions to that. Thank you, Rupert. Anyway, thanks for that, Steve.
Mike, can I ask Steve one more question?
Absolutely. He'll have to be the he'll have to give you his consent for that. I'm not a question pimp.
We are going for a 48-hour unbroken stretch of Q&As here, so take all the time you need.
Who wrote Crystal Clear Party Ice?
I don't remember. Okay. I don't know.
Because on my podcast, I have all bogus commercials, and that was inspired by Crystal Clear Party Ice. Like, if you can make up a product like that, you can make up, like we have Whompers, I'll be Footlock hot dogs sponsors, or, and get a ruler and measure it yourself. It's not a foot long, it's free. So, and then one other thing, please, as a writer, someone who's written for decades and decades, once when you stopped working for David Letterman, do you still write? I mean, do ideas pop in your head and you just let them go, or are you constantly still jotting things down, thinking that maybe they'll find someplace somewhere else?
Yeah, the machine is always at least idling and sometimes revving, but I find that I was able to let those specific forms mostly go. When the show ended in 2015, I'd been there for 25 years. I thought, I love a well-crafted monologue joke, or a great extra, as we called them, the fake commercials and news interrupt and all that. But I don't crave more of them for myself. I've eventually found, and Bathtubs actually was part of this evolution, a lot of the sort of comedy muscles now are have switched to other things. I've been writing longer form prose, longer fiction, novel I'm wrestling with, some scripts like sitcom pilots and screenplays, but I found what most directly takes a lot of my Letterman training is songwriting.
Mhm.
I like having a premise. Okay, that's a good idea. All right, develop it, have some surprises in it, and then get out in a couple of minutes before people are sick of it. And that is so much the same training involved that I immersed myself in for so long at Letterman.
Okay,
That's
fantastic.
amazing.
So
Yeah.
that eventually I'll be pestering people about that. I've been in Nashville recording originals, working on some music videos. Someday I'm gonna step off that cliff and say, well, I got to do this, and take a deep breath and say, here I am, world, musically, see what
Yeah.
happens.
We can't wait. Take our money.
All right. You keep saying take our money. I love this in a gig economy.
Like,
It's more
like
important
people
than
in
ever.
music make money nowadays.
Yeah,
That's
right.
the other thing. Yes, I just keep finding creative disciplines that are going to be tough to monetize, I think. But
Yep.
but
Art and
anyway,
commerce.
I hope that kind of answered your question. Yes, various forms of writing will always be going on. Sometimes it's just muttering something bizarre to myself while I'm in the kitchen making dinner. But yes, I have much more organized, disciplined bursts of energy as well.
Well, yeah, because after Johnny Carson left, he kept writing jokes, and then he would just send them to Dave. He had to do something with them, so he just
Yes, and I was
Yeah.
running the monologue, and I would get these jokes passed along from Dave's office where someone had transcribed them, and it was clear that Dave was not going to cut this joke in rehearsal. So get ready. It's gonna come in.
right. Yeah. Well, you're gonna pass on a Carson joke.
Yeah, but I believe Dave did enjoy the absurd formality of making sure that Johnny Carson got paid $75 for each joke put on.
Yeah, like Carson needed the
I
money.
mean, when you're retired and on a fixed income, that's real money.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, fantastic.
Darin,
Yeah.
thank you so much for I know you're in the middle of your day here, but the fact that you knew this was happening and you were like, oh man, can I please talk to the man, and I'm grateful that we could make this happen today, buddy.
I appreciate it. Steve, it was great talking to you. Mike, always nice talking to you again.
Love you, man. Love you so much.
The episode of Irritable Dad Syndrome with Mike Chisholm as our guest dropped today. Go to irritabledadsyndrome.com. That's my plug.
I know it would almost be organized if we weren't just flying by the seat of our our pants.
Yeah.
It has the illusion of all being carefully planned. That's all you need.
That's right. As long as the illusion's there. Love you, brother. And you and I will talk very soon.
Great. Steve, see you. Take care, buddy. Nice to meet you.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was cool. Thank you very much for
still there. No, he's not.
Okay, I want to get to some of these questions that we have here. And again, we're hopefully we're assuming people have watched the doc at this point. If you haven't, that's okay too, but I'm just going to get into some questions basically like you have watched the doc. I don't know if you and I said this with the cameras on or not. I love collecting things. Like I almost took a video of my office upstairs just to show you all the different things that I collect. And in every single one of those disciplines, pastimes, whatever you want to call it, I know an alpha collector. So like if it's hockey cards or comic books, or whatever it might be, action figures, whatever it might be, I know somebody who is like the ultimate collector of that subgroup or whatever. You are, if not the foremost, you are up there at the tippy top of being the foremost collector of industrial musicals and the items that were created around them. Is that a fair statement to say?
I think so. There are a couple other collectors who have done very well with the vinyl, and sometimes they have things I don't have. I probably have more things that they don't have, but It's a very friendly rivalry with me and 2 or 3 other people. But what I've ended up doing that no one else has done is doing the detective work of finding people. And
Right.
as you see in the documentary, yes, I hope that they'll have big scrapbooks full of programs like Sid Siegel had. That was like, oh my God.
Oh, when you went up
Oh,
into the attic, when you went to
oh,
the attic
yeah.
and so, oh my
In
God.
Hank Beebe's 1855 house in Portland, Maine, that is so enormous. The basement had a loft in it. That's what that was. And yeah, all these decaying cardboard boxes full of decades worth of, and he did many other things besides industrials. I've been
Sure.
back many times to the Beebe house. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and he's 96 now. His wife Nancy is 95. They are just a endlessly delightful font of stories and wisdom. But I always try to do a little archaeology in the basement, and there are always boxes that I've never seen before that are just, the man has been in the business for 70 years, unbelievably prolific, very humbling. Yes, I live in an era where a lifetime's output can be fit onto a small hard drive, and he, from almost his whole career, is just reams and piles and stacks of music manuscript paper and
Yeah.
yellow pads and typed scripts and everything up to the ceiling and beyond. And it's amazing. But I just feel so happy that I've been able to tell him and people like him, like Sid Siegel or the Browns, hey, this stuff, somebody cares about it, and let's try to corral it while we still can. And
oh my God, there's so many ways to go from what you just said. I'm going to stay on the collector route, but we're gonna talk about the emotion that comes out of you when talking about this and going into this. And I'm so glad you just in the film, you open up like a flower. Your emotions just open up at random times throughout the film, powerful times, and you just did it right there. I just appreciate that so much. But I'm going to stay on the collector thing for a second here because I want to kind of go into some of the stats. So how many pieces of vinyl do you have? Do you think, do you even know the number? It's thousands, right?
No. I have sort of gradations of it. Like there's the core stuff, and then there's a sort of peripheral things that are almost industrial shows, like Insider Only Industries, something or others, but there was never a live show. Or this one is from a convention, but it's all spoken, and they're concentric rings of it. And putting all of it together, I don't know, 300 records maybe.
Okay, 300. Okay. What's the most expensive, if you don't mind asking, if you don't mind me asking, I don't want to embarrass in any way, and don't answer if you don't want to. What's the most expensive piece you've ever bought?
There've been a couple that have been over $200.
Yeah.
Not very many. I think the first copy of the Edsel Dealer show that I ever saw, that's what you call a cross collectible. Nobody else I was bidding against cared about industrial musicals. They were all,
they like Ford.
They were all Edsel enthusiasts who say, I have to have this bit of arcane Edsel internal infotainment to prop on the seat of my 1958 Citation. The next time I go to the car show, I'll win a trophy if I've got it that far developed. And so there are Edsel people who want that record. The people who want it for industrial shows, there's only me and 5 others really. But that one, there's a Cadillac show that is still the only copy that has ever surfaced. Somebody, a record dealer who knew that I liked, knew he had me over a barrel. There was a Royal Pudding show, which I only learned about in the last couple of years. Somebody had one that turned up on eBay, and I'm partly responsible for this. I know. Now people have seen the movie or read the book, and they think, oh my God, I've got some of these stupid records in the back room. This is going to be a gold mine. And they put up relatively common records for $3,000.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
$5,000 on eBay. And I have a couple copies, and I've never paid more than $40 or whatever. And but this guy had not only some of these more common ones, but he had one I'd never seen before for this brand of instant pudding. And it was $4,000. And I took a deep breath after a while and emailed and said, would you consider $200? And he said, oh no. And it is still sitting on eBay for $4,000. But in the interim, I luckily found another copy on eBay that did have some bidding. It was a little north of $200. So the market value of this stuff is still very much emerging from the fog. Most of the rare ones don't have any market value because there's only been one or two ever found, and they've never come up on the market in a public way. The more visible ones, like everybody now knows what this is, and everybody wants this if you have any inkling at all.
Yeah.
This one I used to be able to find for $25 because it was pretty common by the standards of this stuff. Still shockingly rare by most kinds of record collecting standards, but
sure.
I at one point had 5 or 6 duplicates of it, which was a super wise move on my part, because now a record easily sells for $300 or $400.
Well, and it's funny, like everything has perspective, and I love this, because anybody who does want to get into it from a collector's standpoint, relatively inexpensive when you compare it to anything else that's out there. And ironically, like I look at like even something like action figures, and I see, you know, these play sets that are going for thousands of dollars. And
like
and
the
things
Star
like that.
Wars. I
Sure.
know a friend of mine is super into Star Wars stuff, and you go down the crazy rabbit hole of, they only made 9 of these prototype Boba Fett figures with this
Absolutely.
thing and that detail and that color, and and then you get to the drama of somebody stole one right out of somebody. I love those stories because they are completely alien to me, yet completely familiar, because I understand there are only some minuscule quantities in the world, and it's a lump of plastic. It's nothing, and yet it has been invested with all this meaning and desire. And I do comfort myself that at least these record albums, it's cardboard and it's vinyl, but there's musical genius in here that has been applied to the world's least likely topics, and that to me I find thrilling, and that's what got me going, and that's what keeps me going. And the fact that the bulk of these records were pressed in such tiny quantities that for the rest of my life I will still be coming up with ones that no one has seen before. That's happened a couple times this year already. And it's just, how can this be possible? But if there are only 200 copies pressed of the Neuhoff Meatpacking Company show, what are the odds that any have ever crossed the paths of any collector network? And if you live long enough, maybe one gets into the hands of the collecting community.
I'm so delighted by this, because you're right. It's exactly the same language, just with different dialects depending on the what you're talking about. I know a little bit about those Star Wars stuff. I've got a Boba Fett from 1983 still in the package. Now I've had it for 20 years. And it, in the collector world, there's tremendous value for it, and people are offering me ungodly amounts of money for it. I won't sell it for sentimental reasons, but there's a hell of a lot more Boba Fett's from 1983 in the package than there are versions of The Bathrooms Are Coming or Diesel Dazzle or okay, thank you. Oh my God, it's like you know how to segue, because I want to talk about how in the movie that one there was kind of at the time the Holy Grail. Isn't it interesting how in our human experience perspectives change, because now I'm certain that you have a new Holy Grail, but in the movie that was your Holy Grail right there, and you're holding it now. You weren't holding it by the end of the movie. So I would love to hear the story about how that finally came into your possession.
So this record, if you have not seen the movie, this is one that I had known about since around the year 2000. My friend, punk rock legend Don Bowles.
Yes.
I still remember the day he called me up. We had met at the Rose Bowl in LA and sort of struck up this odd friendship. I don't really know anything about punk rock. He is just a cool guy who appreciates all manner of weird, funny stuff, and we clicked at some primal level. But he knew I was looking for these records, and he called me up one day and said, "You gotta hear what I just found at a, I don't know, flea market somewhere." And he just played this record to me over the phone. This is the thing about the collecting community, which you see across the board. I think people are not really, they're not hoarders. They're not, I must win, you must lose. It's,
That's right.
I can't wait to share my discoveries with my friends. So On Bowles and I have this bizarre friendship based on, oh my God, Steve Young is going to freak out when he hears this new record I found. So Gould Growing, mid-70s, this Illinois company that made fuses and junction boxes and radios and all sorts of technical equipment and batteries. And one of the songs has a quite exhaustive list of their products, so that's helpful. But I thought, oh, this is great. And it's mostly parodies, which can be a cut below the good stuff. Like,
this is good. I'm glad you're going into this. I wanted to ask about this. Well,
Yeah,
it's like
Deep
Weird.
Asshole
It's like
of
Weird Al
Bastard
versus the
Time.
original, right?
Most of what I consider the primo stuff in this super bizarre genre was original music and lyrics. Somebody took a completely blank page and wrote a musical about selling and servicing diesel engines or bathroom fixtures or fluorescent lights or whatever. Sometimes the somewhat less ambitious ones just had people saying, we don't have the time or budget to reinvent the wheel here. Just take a bunch of songs people already know and put new lyrics to them.
Can I ask you a question about that real quick?
Yeah.
Can I jump in and ask?
Yeah.
Because to me, okay, I hear you when you say less ambitious or maybe the easier path to the resolution or to the goal. But I also, like, when I go out and see local live music, I think that there are two types of artists that I go see. I think that there are artists that I go see who have forged their own material, and there's a special gift in that. And I love that very, very much, especially when they put their emotion into it and I can make a connection to the music. But then there's the other group who is a really tight band that plays songs that I know, and I have equally a fun experience, but they're two very different experiences. Was there also a discipline within the industrial musical genre where the creators said, okay, no, this particular one, we want to use songs that people already know, because there's for X amount of reasons other than what you were talking about, like we want to do that for the entertainment value, like it's almost like cover tunes, or was it primarily what you were talking about? No, let's just get to the end goal in a quicker, easier way.
I think there was always a debate about what's going to have the better effect on an audience.
That's where I'm coming from with the covers.
If it's a tune you've already heard, you lock into that immediately, but an hour later, are you only going to remember the original tried and true version, or are you going to remember the message that had been custom crafted with new lyrics to this tune?
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a correct answer to that or not. I do think in the heyday of this stuff, part of the prestige for companies was saying, we have commissioned an original musical. We have commissioned the finest Broadway talent to, and this is one of the very earliest ones. Oldsmobile kind of kicked it off in the early 50s, and they were quite excited about the fact that we have taken a genre of music and reinvented it for behind closed doors corporate purposes. And I do think there was a sense that we have paid the highest prices to Broadway's finest talent to create something that has never been heard before. Yeah. And you could also say, well, yes, people will love hearing show tunes from How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, repurposed for our company's messages, and that could be sort of tongue-in-cheek fun also. And I do like some of those, but I always thought the real top stuff was the amazing level of just commitment, and the sky's the limit of, we're just going to start, all right, hire talented people and have them just create something from scratch. But so back to Gould Growing, a lot of it is from How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, but also the mid-70s hit The Hustle which now suddenly has lyrics about Gould is your worldwide leader and marching forward into the future to provide batteries and transformers and all these things. So Don Bowles has this record. No one else has ever seen one. I mentioned in the movie there was a rumor that one had turned up and had gone in Japan.
Yeah,
I don't remember now where I heard that, but it seems so perfectly plausible that I decided I'm just going to continue to repeat that rumor. But, all right, let's say there's one known copy in the world with an asterisk.
Right.
And I've got the, Google alerts set up and eBay search terms saved and all this stuff. And I think, all right, one day, maybe, but anyway, Bathtubs comes out and new people are always coming to me once in a while with interesting new material, programs, films, behind the scenes stories, whatever. Once in a while, a new record, but not that much. But then one day a message comes in to the Facebook page for Bathtubs, a guy in Illinois named Angel. And he says, oh my God, I just watched this movie. It's so great, so lovely. Hey, it's bizarre that Gould Growing record is in the movie too. I got a copy of that. And I saw this message and I said, wait a minute. The second copy confirmed in the world of Gould Growing has now been, all right. And I wrote back to this guy, and, oh, so great to hear from you. I'm glad you loved the movie. I was rather thrilled to hear that you had Gould Growing. I've been looking for that. Would you ever consider a trade or possibly a sale? And he wrote back and said, you're telling me you don't have it even now? And I said, no, you can't get it. It's, how would I? He said, well, I have to send it to you. It's got to be with you. And this again, that the spirit of what I call the Bathtubs family. People get so excited about being part of this unfolding saga. And this guy, Angel, lived up to his name, sent me this copy of this record. And I just was delighted and thrilled. And I sent him a copy of the book and some other goodies. And we're friends. I've been on a podcast that he does, and we talk about music, and it's just one of those great postscripts to the movie, because I would have been okay if I never found the record. I had a tape and Don Bowles had dubbed it for me and I knew the song. But there is that satisfying closure of, okay, only took 20 years, but yeah, it's on the shelf now.
Two things to say about that. Again, that's something common in the collector community. Since I've started this show, I mean, I've had all sorts. I've had a few scripts sent to me and a few other things from lovingly sent. People know we're revamping the studio. I've got one of, your guys' old bridges that we've just fixed up and are going to be putting in when we do the renovation here. I think that's a common thread through collectors. Collectors want to put smiles on other collectors' faces many times. I love that. I love that Angel did that. And then of course, the other part of this community that I love so much is, like you say, I'm just putting the exclamation point on the fact that there's not a hoarding element to it. All the material is available, and this leads to a couple other questions that I have here as well. The material is available. You guys digitize and send out. It's not about having the music. Y'all can have the music. Anybody who wants to celebrate even the most rare performance, we can make sure that you hear it. It's not a matter of you not being able to hear it. Even up till the late 90s, I'm a music collector. My favorite bands, I've got their most obscure stuff. I've got bootlegs. I've got all that stuff. Impossible to get everything before the internet. Now with the internet, you can create these communities where y'all share this stuff. And it's just so beautiful to see that and hear that. I wanted to get onto Apple Music and download The Ballad of Steve Young, because listening to it at the end of I want it to come on in my car randomly. I put my music, I've got like 7,000 songs in my Apple Music. I'm a big music guy, and I love putting it on random because I want The Ballad of Steve Young to come up every once in a while when I'm driving. All of these songs are available to my delight. Everything from Bathtubs Over Broadway is in Apple Music right now. You can find all this stuff. You're all sharing it. Is there a rights issue with this stuff? I mean, it says not for broadcast on them. Have any companies ever come out and tried to give you a little bit of static for publicizing these things? Or is there no rights on these because they were never put out for commercial use and so they're fair game?
And it's a very thorny area. I will say, yes, the Bathtubs Over Broadway soundtrack available digitally, also a beautiful 2-record vinyl set, colored vinyl, big 12-page booklet full of liner notes and behind the scenes tidbits and all that, which turned out gorgeously. You can get that through Mondo.
Oh, Mondo did it. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, they're terrific.
Mondo does beautiful work.
And of course it was kind of the grand culmination of what started in 1993. The first one I ever found was a General Electric show. It was a 2-record set. And now in the year 2020, I guess the vinyl came out 27 years later or whatever it was, a 2-record set celebrating this super long, bizarre journey. But it's only a tiny tip of the iceberg, what has been saved on the soundtrack, or a few other little compilations I've quasi officially put out. You can probably find them on Amazon under the title Everything's Coming Up Profits. I did not have to do the legal legwork for the rights issues on Bathtubs, but it was all done properly. And every song was a little bit different. Sometimes things had been copyrighted and protected, sometimes maybe not, or it had lapsed, or it was unclear, or a search was ambiguous, or it was owned by a composer still, or it was owned by a production company that might be out of business. So Deva and her team had to be pretty thorough, hacking through a jungle that really no one had ever hacked through before, because all this stuff was created with the assumption that in 3 weeks or 6 months, no one is ever going to listen to this again. No one is ever going to want to put it out. No one is ever going to want to monetize it or celebrate it or even acknowledge its existence again. This was simply not thought of as an eventuality. And as much as Hank Beebe or Sid Siegel was astonished that I would come to talk to them, the companies, even Ford or General Electric, they had saved practically none of this. Almost none of it, and were befuddled when Deva or I would approach whatever company historian and say, "What do you have on these?" We did what? You're telling me we wrote musicals?
Wow.
And they were as befuddled by this as anyone. But they've been generally the contact I've had with corporations sort of bizarrely pleased that nobody's worried now about the rival companies getting a hold of the specifications for the new tractor engine. That's 60 years in the past. Nothing's
proprietary anymore.
That's pretty much not an issue. So now it's just, this is a super bizarre part of our heritage that we had forgotten about, but it's kind of charming and awesome, and it's part of this grand tradition that this movie has now told us about. I mean, we've had I've got a beautiful book that American Standard sent me. They really didn't know about the Bathrooms Are Coming musical until we brought it to their attention.
Holy crap, really?
Nobody working at a company like that in the 21st century really has a institutional memory that goes 50 years back.
Isn't that crazy?
Even General Electric, I mean, there's some place in it's Schenectady, New York, some old GE facility. They've got some form of a museum of technology that has digitized a few scraps of film and even a couple of these records and put them online. But it doesn't seem to be systematic or carefully done. It's just like, oh, some corner of some storeroom someone forgot to throw in a dumpster a few years ago. Well, let's just see what this is.
I got questions about that too. Okay, before we one that just came to my head right now. When Walter and his team at the Letterman YouTube channel, when they did Tommy a really good solid, in my opinion, because Tommy, as far as I know, when we talked about it, he was the guy that came up with the great moments in presidential speeches, and they did a beautiful montage, which was extended. It was just this long, one intro kind of a thing, and then they just let them go for a few minutes, and they were all fantastic. Has there been talk about on the official Letterman channel doing an extended version of Dave's record collection? Because I think that would be a compelling thing to watch that ties in with what we're talking about here.
I don't recall that something like that has come up. I think I mentioned I did sit down and do a session with Walter and Barbara Gaines for just like Steve Young's highlights or whatever. It's supposed to come out this fall. I'm sure I talked about record collection and bathtubs because that has been a big highlight. It's interesting though to look back on record collection, and there's a couple brief glimpses of it in the documentary. But I recall the whole effect of it as always extremely mixed. The early days of the piece before I even got there, it was just pulling this low-hanging fruit of the weird records that had not really been gathered up yet, but were kind of out there, and like
Shatner stuff.
Yeah, and Jack Palance and Sebastian Cabot and Tune Your Zither and all these things that were. And then once the piece was established, it was getting harder and harder to find new material that hadn't been done already.
Yep.
And I stumbled upon this vein of bizarre material, but even then, not necessarily understandable or fun or funny in 10-second chunks.
Right.
Like some of the bits did play well. Like you're always going to do well with playing My Bathroom from the American Standard Show.
Yeah. And the wheat one too, because Dave's singing along to it, and it's really punchy and wheat. Like it's
that's what I'd call a peripheral one, because I think that was something that the public could go to, and it was just this odd topic about the Canadian grain industry, but it was not sponsored by a company to entertain and inform its own people at a convention or whatever. So I knew I cut this stuff fairly finely, but record collection was always stressful for me because I would fight like hell to find stuff and try to isolate a good clip, and then you have to write a hilarious joke, and then Dave has to be tickled by the clip and the joke. And it seemed to me that about 60% of what was on record collection kind of was almost. So there were great moments in record collection, and I did occasionally find something wonderful, but an uninterrupted long stretch of record collection might be tough.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay, I'm going to go back to this other question, otherwise I'm going to forget it. Okay, Coca-Cola. Was there an industrial musical about New Coke?
It wouldn't surprise me if there was, but the thing about this stuff is it's very much the minority of shows that were ever recorded, and certainly recorded on vinyl.
Right.
And for every one I have, I think there were literally dozens or hundreds that existed that have left no trace and were purely ephemeral. Yeah,
that blows my mind. You have 300 whatever, and there are dozens on top of that.
There were tens of thousands of industrial musicals over the decades, and most people involved in this business thought, all right, the job of this project is to get these people excited and entertained this one time in this one place, and then they'll go home and be redoubled in their joy and efforts. If we want to be extremely extravagant and really prove our chops as prestigious and well-funded, we can spring for the souvenir record album. But that was super rare.
Okay.
Extraordinarily rare. So for every show I have, there were so many that we don't know about. And I look at stuff out of Hank Beebe's basements for programs of shows that have not been recorded, or headshots of actors from 1963 with a list of their industrial shows on the back, and they're all ones I've never heard of. And I slowly assembling the sort of ghost ledger of things that happened that have left no trace.
Okay, so there's a database of titles at least, or something that you kind of
or even just companies, but yeah, it's not well organized yet. It's one of my
but do you have a number? Like it's thousands.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was thousands. But as for New Coke, I have a Pepsi show on vinyl that could not be more gleefully scornful of the new Coke debacle. They just thought, oh my God, the soda gods have tossed this on our lap, and this is heaven. It writes itself. It's like new Coke. What a delightful disaster for the rival. So yes, I have the sort of mirror image version.
I love that story. I'm a fan of that story. I've got some corporate. I worked for 23 years for a major corporation, not in the soft drink business, but they sold I worked for Costco. Anyway, I was with Costco for 23 years. And so I have a little bit of this, I have interest in this. I have running interest in this because I just wonder what I would have thought if Costco ever sent me, because I was in the marketing department, I was a corporate trainer. Like, this is kind of right down the alley of what I would have done. And I always just wondered, what would a Costco industrial musical look like? Walmart obviously did one, and so it's probably similar. But one of the things in business that has fascinated me always was the Coke Pepsi thing, and that time with Coke, with the new formula and the Pepsi challenge and all of that stuff. And when I saw it, because there's quick footage of a Coke one on Bathtubs, and I thought, oh my God, would they have done one on new Coke? And to me, that just is fascinating. That Pepsi one, if it's available anywhere, I would love to take that show in. Do you enjoy taking the show in via vinyl or film and watching the whole thing? If you potentially can, what would you prefer, or do you like them both?
So few of them are on film or video, and I do have a slowly growing batch of VHS tapes and DVDs and even reels of 16 millimeter film. I do think that much of the time, these things decades later, for people who are not in the business, are much better enjoyed in the condensed form of a vinyl record, because the actual experience of going to one of these, I think, could have been tough for somebody who was not deeply invested in the ins and outs of selling, servicing diesel engines. There were speeches, there were presentations, there were some of these things. You get an album and you realize this stretched over 3 days. Wow. This might have been deadly. They started at 8 a.m, and there might have been a great sort of kickoff song, and then you might have just been trying to pay attention for 3 hours with some non-entertaining presentation. And even some of the musicals I've seen, like where I have a VHS tape of the entire Ragu spaghetti sauce musical or Burger King or something, I find myself wanting to fast forward through parts of it. Okay. I just get me to the fun song. Okay,
that makes sense. I want to rapid fire a couple of these ones here. Budgets, astounding numbers, simplified very well for the documentary. Average Broadway musical back then cost about $300,000. Some of these industrial musicals were given a $3 million budget, literally 10 times the number, or $400,000, I think is the number in the show, but nearly 10 times the amount. Were there ever things built, stage sets, props, things like that, built with care and with budget, that made their way over into other actual Broadway presentations and things? Because, obviously a lot of these things are one and dones. Did a lot of those things move back into the theater industry, or was this a separate kind of a deal where the company would own that and they would do what they saw fit with it?
I do think there was some cross-pollination, and the great thing about industrials for certain kinds of creative people is you were given a big budget and there was no fear of bad reviews or not selling tickets. So you knew the house was going to be full of tractor dealers, and they were just going to be ready to absorb whatever you gave them. So sometimes there was wildly bold and experimental theatrical techniques or stagecraft that somebody would later say, what we should do for this actual Broadway show. My friend was telling me about this thing he did for the kids sneaker show a few years ago. And hear me out, this sounds crazy, but they did something that I always thought we should try. I do think that occasionally stuff crossed back over there. But as for the budgets, yes, glory days of post-war American economy, 50s and 60s. Yep. The money was there. Let's hire whoever's the best. We don't care how much you get people on their way up in Broadway who would soon become household names. They were still attainable, but sometimes people went back and forth. Somebody's already a star, but they say, yeah, for that paycheck, I'll do that for 6 weeks. Okay. And so you get people who are already famous going back into the industrials sometimes. But I do think a lot of the budget, when Hank Beebe mentions the first Chevy show he worked on, the budget was $3 million, not just paying everybody involved very well and getting top talent, but a show like that moved around the country to like 5 cities. And a lot of the budget must have been loading up tractor trailer trucks full of equipment and props and costumes and putting people up in different cities in first class hotels and all that. My Fair Lady did not have to put up audience members or even its cast and crew in a New York hotel. So
feed them 3 times or et cetera, et cetera. It's, all the things that come with a convention, which many of us can identify with.
I do think the little bit I've gleaned about the economics of this stuff, it was a tax write-off for a long time.
Sure, it's all marketing.
Eventually some of that got carved away maybe in the later years, but you start seeing by the 70s smaller casts, more and more with videos on screens and films and slide projectors. That's a whole other realm of industrial and corporate gigs, is the videos and the slides. Original musicals were so expensive to create and put on. I think by the 70s, with things tightening up economically, they were among the fripperies that were the first to go. And you had
the fat that was trimmed.
Yeah, consultants. Yeah. Also, I think there was this turn toward the 70s of consultants saying, cut out all this stuff. The bottom line effect of it is hard to quantify. Maybe it's there, but I can't prove it. We don't care if people have good morale. Anyway, it doesn't matter. If people don't like to work for Plymouth,
so be it.
Yeah, we don't care. You're not here to have fun or to feel like you're part of a family. You're just here to work. And so suddenly you're eroding the whole corporate culture. And I don't want to over romanticize how good it might have ever been, but I do think in the 50s and 60s there was this sense of, you joined a company and you were at least lip service paid to, we're a family and we're gonna make you glad you're here every year, and you're gonna succeed and we're gonna succeed and America's gonna succeed. I do think there was some legitimacy to that. And then the other side of the coin was, get rid of all that, we don't care. And then we're in this terrible hole that we're still digging ourselves out of. Do people even care where they work or what the company's mission is? And
Steve, I lived it. I lived it in the 90s. I mean, I when I started with Costco, it was the model hadn't been proven yet. They had just merged with Price Club. Price Club was out east and Costco just merged with them. And the whole even idea of paying to shop at a store was novel. And I remember during the growth phase of Costco, the level of morale, and this is just my opinion from my experience, but I worked there 23 years and I was I was behind the curtain, and it was incredible to watch as Costco moved up. The climbing of the hill that we want to get to the top of creates an incredible amount of morale. And the idea of doing something bigger than just boxing people's groceries in the items in the boxes that they came packaged with on the pallets, and doing things a little bit differently. I mean, it was way bigger than that. It was, we're going to prove them wrong. We're going to change the way that retail is. And I mean, all of those things. Fast forward to Costco where it is now. And I mean, I still got a lot of friends that work there. And when I left there, it was a very, very different place from lots of cogs in the wheel now compared to, and so I lived that. And I mean, I don't think it's coincidental. I think it's the same evolution that we're talking about here. I really, really do. I think Sears back then versus Sears when it closed, again, very different places. And maybe Amazon could use some of these industrial musicals to up the morale.
They may already be doing them. The modern iterations of this stuff keep coming to my attention. It will never go away, even if it's not always going to be a big original musical theater production, but music and drama and pageantry that stirs the soul of whatever
Yes.
group of people has been brought together to absorb this team building message. There's always going to be some version of that, but I do think that, yeah, I'm a comedy writer and an English major, and I've gotten such an education in American business history and the psychology of groups and companies, and how do people relate to their profession and their jobs, and it's fascinating. I do think you see the rise and fall of a lot of American economic history with this stuff.
Yes.
I think it was Hank Beebe who was telling me he did a lot of car shows from the 50s into the late 70s. And he said by the late 70s, the exuberance of, oh, we've got the hot new model and we're gonna show the world that this is the car that everyone's gonna want. That had kind of changed into this sort of nervous, paranoid, we just don't, we want to avoid liability. We don't want to make claims that someone's going to come after us for. We want to ensure that, I mean, companies, and you may have seen this with Costco, the original fire in the belly eventually morphs into just I got to cover my ass. I got to make sure that my people and I'm not in trouble, and I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm not going to take a risk, and you see this over and over again. And the best of this industrial musical stuff was not purely cheerleading either. Some of the better, braver companies, or at least companies with better, braver executives, said, put all the bad stuff in the show. We got to find a way to diffuse the tension between us and the people in the field. Acknowledge it through a funny song that's self-deprecating towards us back at headquarters. We know we screwed up with this program or that product. Everyone knows it. If we own it, we can start to rebuild trust with the people in the audience. And doing that with a song and a funny show, oh my God, 100 times more powerful than just a guy at a podium saying, oh, we realize there's been some issues with the X27 program, and we're going to try to mitigate. If you could hit that right, this is one of the many things I've learned. This stuff could be the secret door to making things so much better at your organization. It didn't automatically solve the problems, but if you could put this stuff out there, good or bad, in this kind of presentation, you could win people over and actually get that goal accomplished of people want to work here and people are ready to believe in us. It
reframed it, and like you said, I mean, using it through a delivery system that automatically evokes emotion, music, theater, doing it that way. I mean, you're hitting, I mean, I'm no believe it or not, I'm not an expert on the brain, but I would think that it's hitting different parts of the brain, the emotional responses rather than the logical spots. And I mean, when people make decisions, they make them on emotion, and to me that makes so much sense. I got one more question on the economy of things before we move over and get ready to bring her home, because I mean, again, you're so generous of your time, and I'm going to take advantage of that generosity as much as I can, Steve.
Turns out I can talk about this topic close to endlessly. I've never tried doing it literally endlessly. I'm sure that could happen someday, but yes, whenever you feel like you've had enough, we'll stop.
Well, okay. Well, I appreciate that. We'll decide to stop because, again, I'm the Energizer Bunny when it comes to this. I don't know if Energizer ever did a musical, but an industrial musical. The idea that, by the way, I think you should host a podcast for this at some point, if it becomes available. We're building a Letterman podcast network, so tell you what, we'll put some infrastructure over here, and we'll see if we can figure something out for you over there.
Yeah, this idea has come up occasionally, and it does seem on the face of it to be an appealing idea. I would need some help because I don't know how to conceptualize getting going, and I also worry how many guests can I find to come on and talk about this, because that seems to be the key, because I don't want to be sitting there talking all day myself.
No, I appreciate that. I have some ideas on this, by the way. You're not the only personality in this movie. There are some personalities that watching you and them interact with each other is as an audience member really quite fun. So I've got some ideas about that. But to go back to the economy before I finish, figure that out. There are some actors who I've met, who I know, that don't want features. They don't want a series. They are very content either being a character actor doing one shots here and there, and have built a network of being able to do that, or commercials for that matter, because they've they've made for themselves a very comfortable living, keeping things fairly simple. In the doc, it talks about how most of the actors, it was a good gig. They were well paid to do this. Would you say that there were some? Are there Broadway actors or actresses that you have come across that have been part of these things that were like, no, you know what? I don't want to be on Broadway. I'd rather just kind of do the industrial musical ecosystem. It's a great living. It's different. It's that appeals to me even more. Similar to an actor, how they would want to do commercials as opposed to features.
Mm-hmm.
Is that similar?
I don't know how often there were people who preferred it in a blanket sense. There is sort of deal with the devil aspect to industrials. If you were doing well, you were making very good money, and if you were in a sort of a groove of, oh, all these production companies know who I am and keep requesting me because I learn fast and I do a great job and I'm
Sure
quick on my feet with this stuff. Yeah, you could make a good living and get flown around the world and be put up at great hotels and work with other terrific people, but the world would never know who you were.
Right.
And even your family. This came up in the people in the movie.
Yes.
It's hard to explain to your own parents or the rest of your family what exactly it was you were doing, and that could be painful.
Or not being proud of what you're doing, and
just
almost even. Yeah.
I mean, there was a stigma to this. Hank Beebe was called the king of the industrial show in the New York theater colony, and it was meant as an insult because this was the beneath contempt shadow world of musical theater. But he has outlived all those people, and somewhat to his astonishment, lived long enough to see the wheel turn, and now people who were not even born when this are happening talking about, that Diesel Dazzle stuff is great. And so I love that, and he loves that. I think probably most actors still wanted to make it big on Broadway, and some of them did. Many of them probably fell into a long groove of industrials and then were chagrined when it kind of petered out more or less, not all at once, but sort of in the 80s into the early 90s.
It eroded.
Sheldon Harnick, who I talked to in the movie, he and Jerry Bach wrote Fiddler on the Roof, but before they were those guys, they were doing industrials in New York in the late 50s. And one of the first ones I found was their Ford tractor show, which, as I say in the movie, I had no idea that these names were significant, Bach and Harnick, but I was quickly educated on that. But Sheldon told me at one point, once they had Fiorello, they had She Loves Me, or She Loves You, I can never remember which, a couple of Broadway shows that kind of got them some traction. He said he felt a twinge of, oh gosh, I hope I don't have to stop doing industrials.
Oh, that's beautiful.
He found the craft puzzle of it so engaging. What is the least promising topic for a musical? And then you have to load in all these details and facts and specifications that the company needs you to mention in the lyrics. You're already way down in the hole, but through your artistry, can you dig yourself back out of the hole and make something wow, that's pretty good. That's catchy. Why am I still humming that song about Nabisco? And I thought that's kind of awesome. He loved making something really good out of, I don't know, just throw a pile of random ingredients on the counter and I'm going to make you a great dinner.
Yes. You know what? Steve O'Donnell and I talked about this on his episode on this show, where I asked him what he preferred when it came to writing. Did he prefer the great pasture, where really nothing is limited other than maybe standards and practices kind of thing, or did he prefer being given a shoot that he had to kind of go through with parameters, and now it's like, okay, write your way out of this one? And so we had to talk about that, and it's interesting how that has come up. And I think in the creative process, that is something that that's almost universal. Whether it's the type of music that you're going to write, the type of play or piece of comedy. The other thing that I want to talk about too is the other echo I think that has happened when you talk about some of these actors and actresses who would go to industrial musical for project, move over to Broadway for X amount of time, and then move back to another project like that. I see that with comedians all the time. I think Bill Burr will do a corporate gig and even keep it clean for you if you want. There's a lot of comics who they absolutely will go and dabble and fall to the Apatow in his movie Funny People. They did a spoof on that idea with the company MySpace. The idea where a performer will be hired to kind of fall into the company lines in their performance on that particular evening for that particular audience. So I think that's a comparable anyway.
Yeah, I've seen the enormous versions of that. I at one point got a bootleg DVD of a late 80s Anheuser-Busch convention, like for all the beer distributors. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Liza Minnelli, Frank Sinatra, and Sammy Davis Jr. And they come out, and my fingers were crossed that they were going to do special material about beer distribution.
Wouldn't that have been great?
They did not, but they were still, and this was another facet of this, which has grown over the years and probably now become the dominant one. Just bring in the people you already know and love and have them do a show or a concert, whatever. And they don't have to reinvent the wheel about their material being all about the company. They may throw in a few flourishes.
Yep.
But that's probably going to get you through in most cases. But I've started, people have reached out to me in the last couple of years and said, hey, we saw the movie. I work at this big production company. Would you be interested in actually writing some comedy for this Silicon Valley company's convention? And I said, yes, because I do think, well, I might as well get a little paycheck out of it. And also I do love that feeling of, all right, I know nothing about this company. I'm going to start learning about it. I'm suddenly I've got this sort of little smudgy window into this world I didn't know about. And they're going to fix it if I make any egregious mistakes and get things wrong. But I love saying I should not be trying to write comedy about this particular highly technical marketing tool that they have, or this piece of fishing equipment that the fishing equipment company wants to do. But I still think that is just so perversely wrong that I love it. So I do enjoy it.
I'm very grateful that you said that. So hey, if you've got a company out there, we have an avenue of infotainment right here in Steve Young.
That's right. With great pride and reverence. That's the thing in the end is, and you see it in Bathtubs. When I first find these records, I think there's a clip of me sort of recreating my early feeling of, oh, this is so sad that somebody had to write a whole musical about being a Lipton Foods distributor or something. And then over time, when I get more and more curious and realize, number one, not only are some of these songs brilliant, and number two, when I meet these people, they're terrific.
Yep.
I just think there's no shame in being hired by some company and doing a great job at what you're hired to do. And you could say, well, maybe don't sign on to work with an organization that's blatantly evil on the face of it. I don't want to become an apologist for all of corporate America.
No, you're not a shill.
No, all the skullduggery that bad actors at various corporations have done over the years. They don't get a pass from me philosophically, but I do say I keep that separate in my mind from the terrific people I've met who were hired to write a show about, oh, here's the new 65 Ramblers, or here's the new typewriters or whatever. And those people handed a nearly impossible job, carrying it off with panache and wit and flair. That does inspire me. But even all these companies, Hank Beebe himself working on this stuff for a long time, among many other kinds of music, very varied career. But he told me at one point, driving out of New York City for the weekend to go up to the country, stuck in traffic on Route 95, looking around him at the sea of cars and realizing all these cars were sold by salesmen who'd come to see the shows that I wrote. And I am partly to blame for the predicament I now find myself in. And that is a paradox that we're all in some way or another. Whatever we do to survive has ripple effects that may not be purely beneficial to the planet. So I like it when people have the wisdom to at least frame those thoughts. There may not be a solution.
Oh my God, I love that answer so much. Okay, before we get to how I want to bring it home, and I hate to say, okay, I've got a couple. Did any of these, to your knowledge, any of these productions ever hire the Rockettes?
Oh yes. Yes, there were a few musicals done in Radio City that I know of.
I'm so glad the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, let me see. I think I may have to step away for a minute and pull up a different record album. You'll see.
No problem at all. I always find that it's so fun to talk to somebody who has an encyclopedic, I don't even know the word, an encyclopedic. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I added an attic in there. An encyclopedic knowledge of anything. When it comes to Letterman stuff, of course, I love talking to Don Giller, because I mean he's so sharp when it comes to this stuff. Any collector that I know of that we talk about, anything that they're an expert on, it's so fun to do this and to answer that off the cuff, to go, oh yes, oh there we go, the new wide world of Ford tractors equipment.
Yep.
Radio City with the Rockettes.
That's right. Radio City, October 64. And I got this one autographed by the composer Wilson Stone not too long before he passed away. So that's the other super high level nerd zone of my collection. Whenever possible, I have copies of these records signed by the creators or the performers. But yeah.
And personalized, right?
That's right. To Steve, not just to random industrial musical appreciator, to Steve.
I know a little bit about that. To Mike, my best friend, David Letterman, right there.
Oh, well, that's nice.
I know a little bit about.
That's when you guys were really tight.
That's right. That's exactly right. He's got another one. He signed 2 for me, and the other one he signed to Mike, or hello, Mike, nice seat, David Letterman. And then the second one, I think he did just more as I love it. Hey, I love it. I'm getting a lot of mileage out of that. I love that as well. My buddy, who's a collector for profit, or at least for advancement, as the way he sees it. He calls me crazy every single time I meet somebody that I'm an enthusiast of. I ask them to sign it to Mike, please. And he's like, are you crazy? You're getting rid of all of the signatures, all you want. You don't want the personalization on there. I could give a crap about the monetary value of this stuff. I like the sentimental part. The to Mike part is my favorite part of the whole experience. Yeah, so that tickles me, seeing that you have that signed to Steve.
Yeah, I got a lot of them. Hank Beebe, Michael Brown signed a bunch of the things that I had of his. I don't think I brought any record albums with me the one time I met Sid Siegel, so I don't have any signatures of his. Okay,
so Sid, I want to talk about. That's where, again, you're just so good at segueing this stuff, because I do want to get to the end, but
I don't know. I'm just talking.
I can't get there without talking about Sid. He had it's not just a bunch of commercials. Like, this is where the heart really comes into it. There's a quote in there from him. It's not just a bunch of commercials. I'm so proud. Working with captains of industry.
Oh yeah, that was Hank. That wasn't Sid.
Oh, was that Hank that said that? Okay, Hank said that. Working with captains of industry. I love the thought of that. Like, you've got these artists at the highest level, working with these vision makers of the company, who want to cast a certain, whatever it is, and it's morale, it's all the things you've talked about already. but the idea of there being almost a noble purpose to it. Like, I love how he said that and how proud he was of
That's,
that particular aspect.
Seems to be an artifact of an earlier era. We may today haltingly say, oh, I believe that Google or Apple or whatever could be kind of making good on their grand visions of making life better. But this post-World War II America, where just things kept seeming to be going in a good direction, 50s and 60s, captains of industry, they were the people who were leading the charge of the American way of life, which was quote unquote benefiting all of us. Of course,
Sure.
You need a bit of a myopic viewpoint to wholeheartedly accept that. But yes, there was a feeling that what's good for, what was it? What's good for General Motors is good for America. That sort of quote. And Hank has no shortage of anecdotes about completely awful people in the boardrooms and executive suites of various companies and duplicitous corporate behavior. But
I'm sure he met sharks along the way as well.
Yeah, but mostly, I mean, he tells me the only kind of work that ever paid me promptly was industrials. Everything else, people are drawing it out as long as possible to get away with stuff. And he met people who were truly warm, humane visionaries who also happened to be company vice presidents who said, let's see if we can make the whole experience of working here more satisfying and rewarding and just a spiral of positive reinforcement instead of negative reinforcement. So you did have those people, and that's why he felt warmly toward it overall.
Well, we still talk about these people. Like, we talk about Elon Musk, we talk about Steve Jobs, we talk about these, you know, in the modern day, these captains of industry that we, you know, I can see it, and the idea that he got to kind of go under the armor of these companies here and really look around at what we're really trying to do here, and getting everything at its highest level is philosophy again, you know, and that's where he got to kind of live while building this beautiful, catchy art. There's a few things I want to, okay, your girls in this film, absolutely. My granddaughter is my favorite human being. I love her so much. We have this amazing bond, and it's such a beautiful thing. When watching your girls, who I look at rays of light, it just beamed out of them. You know, David captured them so perfectly. I think they came right out of the screen. And I just am so impressed with them. I wonder if the passion that you show for the things that you love is one of those things that is inspiring them to go out and do the same thing. Are they girls that are trying to chase their dreams? And I just really appreciate the relationship that you guys have that's shown in the film.
Well, thank you. They are both wonderful young women now, well into their 20s, both well launched professionally. Rebecca is a therapist. Hannah works for a PR company, and they seem to be finding their way just fine. I don't know that they have yet found anything akin to the strange left turn that I took with the industrial shows, but I do think it's a very rare blessing that a movie like this is something that they get to see about their own parent and come to know them in a different way than they could have otherwise, because they knew all during their childhoods, oh, daddy's collecting these weird records and he seems very excited about this road grader show and all this stuff that meant very little to them. Although, yes, I would sing various songs around the house, and they knew my bathroom, even though they didn't know what it was. The first time I was on the Letterman show as a guest when the book came out, we were watching it at home, and I sit down, talk to Dave about what these records are, and he says, oh, let's hear some samples. And I hold up, the bathrooms are coming, and you hear the clip of my bathroom, my bathroom. My younger girl, Hannah, was thunderstruck. She said, wait a minute, you mean this song I have been hearing and singing all my life is from one of your records in your record collection. She had not ever connected what was going on. So that was a bolt of lightning moment. But the movie showing the different sides of, okay, it's not just collectors finding records, it's talking to people about their lives and making connections and becoming vulnerable.
Yeah.
That is a rare gift, to get that preserved in such a way that not only the world, but your own family can see it. And I've had other people like Sid Siegel's family saying Sid did not live to see the movie.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But his family has told me the last few years, when the book came out and people were coming to interview him from newspapers, and he finally relaxed in some sense. He had always been frustrated that he did this stuff that was kind of awesome, but he couldn't explain it to civilians, really. He said it was such a late arriving kind of pride and vindication for him that when I hear that, I'm very happy.
You've done, again, phenomenal job of segueing to where I'm going to go to. It's now the emotional part of the to bring us home here. I spoke about it the first time on the Letterman podcast when you came on, and we talked about how you listening to one of these new records for the first time, you can't act that childhood glee that just came out of you hearing a new song for the first time, putting two and two together, realizing, I think it was a Michael Brown piece where yeah, okay, just by hearing it. And there are other moments in the film too where when you met the gals who sang my bathroom or from the bathrooms are coming, the moment when you recognized and realized, oh my goodness, I got a two for here. Sid's funeral, of course, going and hearing some of this and seeing some of these one of a kind at that point pieces, the emotion that comes out of you, juxtaposed with the beginning of the show where you talk about how you are the damaged comedy writer, where something could be hilarious, people on the floor laughing, and you're just politely nodding, you get it, but your brain has moved past the actual laugh into maybe the philosophy of it. This stuff is a key to emotional Steve Young. I mean, so many times in the movie, you see your emotion come out while you're just immersed in this amazing pastime isn't even as good of a word, this culture that you love so much. This stuff still makes you emotional to this day.
Well, sure. I take probably greater pride in celebrating the accomplishments, hidden as they were for so long, of some of these terrific people. I take more pride in that than I could take about promoting my own work. And hopefully I'll occasionally have things that I think, all right, I have to bite the bullet and announce to the world that here's something I think is worth your time. Like if I put out a bunch of music, well, I better try to give it a good shot in the world. But it's such a pleasure to see talented, worthwhile people get their due. And that's why, if the book had been all there was, that would have been pretty good. But Deva's movie has widened it all so much. And I do think that, when it comes to my own belief about their talents, you're going to listen to these shows and go, oh, that's a pretty good song, or I don't see what the excitement is. That's almost secondary. I mean, there are a lot of great songs. Sure. I just feel like I had this calling as an amateur historian, and I did not see that coming. And it is about emotion and the biggest questions of life, about how do you judge the value of what you've done with your talents, or how in this difficult, dark world do we reach across chasms and connect with other people and make something meaningful out of that. And that's where the brilliance of Deva's movie really kind of comes in, because people walk into a screening of this, whether it's at the Tribeca Film Festival or wherever,
Yep.
expecting, oh, this is going to be a sort of lighthearted look at some kitsch, and we're going to laugh at it, and it's just all going to be on this level. And they bought a ticket and aren't prepared for that, and then they go on a roller coaster that goes in 8 different directions.
There's a lot of levels. Yes.
And people come out of these screenings saying, I expected to laugh. I didn't expect to cry.
Yes.
And there's a proud history of that. Even like industrial shows, composers would tell me I'd be watching on the side at the Ford Tractor musical, and these hardened salesmen and dealers would have tears streaming down their faces because we pushed the buttons artistically and correctly about, this isn't just, oh, we got to sell more tractors. This is a calling, and this is important, and you're part of the grand human adventure of just our upward swing into ever improving ourselves. And not exactly the same thing, but yes, from unlikely beginnings, the best people can make things that transcend what you thought you were going to get going in.
Oh, so awesome. I'm going to throw this out into the ethos right now. Hey, Criterion, come along, please, and take a look at this. And I think if there's any doc in my life that I would love to see a Criterion edition come out, it would be this one.
Right.
And then although also take our friend Steve Weiner and hire him, because he does a lot of Criterion essays. So let's keep it in the family here and have Steve do an essay about it and all that. Let's have wouldn't that be cool? A Criterion edition of this bad boy?
Absolutely. And then get Steve O'Donnell in on it as well, writing some further remarks and reflections, so we can have the 3 faces of Steve.
Yes. 3 out of 4 of the last Letterman podcasts. Actually, no, it's 4 out of 5. It's 3 out of 5 now, because Gerard's just dropped yesterday, but we're writers named Steve. This is thank you so much for this. I hope it's not the last time. I would certainly love to talk to Dava as well. I mean, my gosh, this is again, as we build the Letterman Podcast Network, you never know what might build out of this. But there's so much meat on this bone, and there are so many questions I didn't get to. Oh my goodness.
Ask one more. Pick one random one.
Okay. Yes. Right. Yeah. See, then there's the whole Letterman thing about him retiring. The show, you got footage of you guys closing up shop again. Any David Letterman fan who hasn't watched this needs to watch it, but we're way past that now. I have my last question. Okay, yes. Okay, so one of my favorite bands of all time, I'm a huge music guy. I think about singing on stage. I'm a big fan of the band called Faith No More. I think about I fantasize still about going up on stage and singing Epic, but with Faith No More on stage. When you were singing, when you were playing guitar and she was singing The Bathrooms or My Bathroom, like, was that a transcendent experience? like playing that for her and you singing it while that was happening and all that, is that a happy place that you can still go back to instantly and just be living in childlike joy?
Yeah, that was a peak moment, definitely, when you step back and think, the fact that this record existed, the fact that I found it, the fact that after many years of frustrated failure, I locked into a batch of the people, Pat as a performer and also Sid, the writer, who I had struggled to find. And you see in the movie, finally, that breaking open. And I was doing these shows, and I was going to do one in Chicago. And I said, Pat, would you come in? Because I knew she lived like an hour outside of Chicago.
Yeah.
And I would love to introduce you to the crowd afterwards. But here's what I think the ideal way this plays out. People have just seen the film of Bathrooms Are Coming. They are amazed and stunned. And then when I say, here she is, Pat from The Bathrooms Are Coming, they're going to go berserk.
Yep.
But then I'm going to do a simple guitar arrangement of My Bathroom. And I know you still got the pipes. Let's do this. Let's seal the deal. And thank God Dava said I have to fly to Chicago based on what I'm hearing about what you're planning. And so she just got on a plane with her camera and her backpack and said, I'm just going to do the best I can with limited equipment and no budget. And it all worked fabulously. The crowd just could not believe what they were seeing. People who could not have imagined caring 3 hours earlier were now gripping the arms of their chairs. Like,
Yep.
how can this possibly be unfolding before our eyes? The same lady, she's singing this song that is just the most beautiful, crazy song we've ever heard, and it's happening 20 feet from us. So yes, that is something that whatever else happens in my life, at least I was able to provide that moment for Pat, who you see in the movie, felt like finally something had locked in some cosmic way, and she was getting some validation for her talent.
God damn it, Steve. You have once again eluded the compliment just so beautifully, because you made it about her. Steve O'Donnell does the same thing. And I tell him I'm genius. Oh, you should talk to Steve Young. Like you guys do that for each other. You're edifying each other like crazy. You were playing the guitar, listening to her sing it. Like for you, like that, and then you make the moment for everybody else, and you paint such a compelling picture that we almost forget you were also having simultaneously a dream come true, not unlike, myself talking to you right now. Like you had a dream come true moment there. And again, for anybody who wants to see that emotion come out of him, look at the look on Steve's face while playing the guitar and she is singing. It is a wonderful moment. And I just got to say, I'm so fucking happy for you that you had that moment, and all of the other ones that you have had as a result of the care that you have put into this, again, culture that you've done. Congratulations on that and some of the other moments and all the other moments that you have had throughout this process. And you can just say thank you on that, and I'll move on.
Fair enough. Thank you. But again, all credit to Deva, who saw more potential in this than even I dared to hope for, and executed it beyond my wildest dreams.
Could not agree more. It is such a beautiful doc. So it's as tight as a drum, beautiful in its execution in every single way. And here's kind of the go home question. If there was any brand on this planet that you could see, I've got one, I picked one as well. If there was any brand on this planet that you could see a beautifully produced industrial musical that would have the compilation, memory stick, I guess is now what you'd probably get, souvenir memory stick of the show and all that. If there's any brand current day that would be willing to do that, what industrial musical would you like to see?
Current day. Okay.
Current day.
I don't know. I might say something like Facebook, just because we have such a complicated relationship with it. I wonder what their own version of trying to unpack that in front of a auditorium full of insiders would be like. And I'm sure they would have the money to hire every top talent in the world if they threw enough money at them. Some of them might just not be available or not philosophically want to do it, but I would not worry that the quality would be low. I would just wonder how deep it would get, at the same time as how catchy it would be. And would this affect our own outlook on anything? That sort of a side issue. The only show that I've ever attended that was pretty much an industrial musical, I don't know if you've heard about this, a few years ago, Skittles decided they wanted to do, instead of a Super Bowl commercial, they were going to put all their budget into a one-shot live show in a theater in New York City in Midtown called Skittles Super Bowl Commercial, the musical.
No, I haven't heard about
this. And the guy from Dexter and 6 Feet Under, what's his name?
I know who you're, okay. I'm not going to recall it, but I know, okay. Yeah. That guy.
I want to call him David Foster Wallace. It was not David Foster Wallace.
No.
But very legitimate singer, performer, as well as actor. They got him to star in this one-shot thing, and I was hearing rumors about it, and people online were saying there's a Skittles commercial musical one time only. And I wrote to Skittles and said, is this maybe somehow related? Did you guys see Bathtubs Over Broadway and get inspired? And they cagily said, "Oh, we don't know what you're talking about, but would you like to come to the show?"
Oh,
And I said,
awesome.
I would. And so I went with a friend, musical theater friend who'd actually been involved in the live show after the Tribeca premiere of the movie. But when I got there, I found that I was given a VIP goodie bag, which included a limited edition vinyl pressing of the music from the show. So I thought, this cannot be a coincidence.
No
And there
way.
was only like 200 copies of this album pressed. So I thought I did not expect to be putting a record from the 21st century on my collecting shelf, but there you were. And it was great. The show was brilliantly self-deprecating and self-referential, beautiful, hilarious snake eating its own tail with levels of reality, with people standing up in the audience to shout out questions and accusations like they were all plants and it was all scripted, but it was just beautifully off the rails. And I just thought, this is special. I don't know if I'll ever go to a real one of these shows, but this was pretty good.
It's as the kids would say now, it was meta.
Was
That's
a little of that can go a long way, but they did it right.
You have been generous with your time. I appreciate this so much. As we close up this very special edition of the Letterman Podcast, is there anything else you want to say at this point here before we close off this one and then figure out what the next one's going to be? Because again, I am going to take advantage of your time for sure. I'm so grateful, Steve. I'm grateful to have this connection that we have here as well. Very much so. Is there anything else that you wanted to note before we close off this episode, other than the obvious? SteveYoungWorld.com for all this stuff. You have copies of the book available still.
Yeah, the book is out of print. The sort of good news, bad news was the movie has done so well, spreading itself around, that people bought up all the books, and we've now gone through 2 printings. But I do have a small stash that I'm selling privately, and if anybody actually has made it this far into the episode and wants a book, how do they find me, or what do we do?
I think you got it on the Facebook page. You've got a friendly automated Facebook robot that helps you with that.
Industrial Musicals Facebook page will be your way into that.
I think that's how I found it, which I'm very grateful for. I'm so grateful to get one of these books. Okay, well, and SteveYoungWorld.com, again, Bathtubs Over Broadway is the film we've been talking about. Steve Young, thank you for sharing yourself with all of us and putting yourself out there the way you have, because it has created an incredible amount of emotion. The surface, all the way down to the lowest layer, right into the heart, is you and this project and all of these things. So thank you for being you, man.
All right. Well, I feel like that's my project, is to be the best, most productive version of me. But I love it when somebody with the right open-hearted spirit who gets it wants to talk about it. So thank you.
No problem, man. That is another episode. This might be our longest one, and I'm very grateful for that. That's another episode of the Letterman Podcast. Thank you very, very much. All the other crap, like, share, subscribe. We want all that stuff. Please do that. Join the Facebook group. We're going to start giving away things. We've got a couple scripts we're going to give away. We've got a lot of these late show rejection postcards where
I had a stack of those at one point.
Absolutely. So we're going to give some of those away. Just good stuff. It's a good time to be a fan of Letterman and Company. This show today being a prime example of that. My name is Mike Chisholm. His name is Steve Young. This has been the Letterman Podcast.
Overcoat and underpants.